Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd. It's time again to talk movies with Professor O, and Professor O is with us. How are you doing today?
Doing great and totally glad to be here.
I am
Excited.
too. Glad to see you after your week away, and we're ready to talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark, are we not?
We are. What an incredible, nearly perfect film. And yeah. Just and like we were kind of talking about before the show a little bit, it's I think you had mentioned it's the movie Spielberg will sit down and watch without criticism of it, without criticizing his own work.
Yes, indeed. He claimed that all of his movies, this is the one he would not make any changes to.
Right. And he can enjoy it with his kids. He
Yeah.
just flat out have the popcorn Coke and enjoy it with his kids.
That despite the fact that it almost got an R rating. Because in the end scene where the ark is opened and one of the guy's heads explodes, they decided that that was just a little too gory. And what they did was they went back and they put fire coming up as his head exploded, and so it obscured some of the more gory aspects of it.
It didn't obscure too much. It's
Well,
still
no, it was just enough to run it back down to a
just
PG,
enough.
and there wasn't a PG-13 until after the
That's
second
right.
Indiana Jones movie, which I think spurred having a PG-13 because of the scenes where they had the bad guy rip people's hearts out of them, and
Oh yeah.
that was incredibly gory, and that pretty much convinced the movie board to say no, we're going to make another rating that
We're
comes
gonna make a
somewhere.
rating in between. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a great point. That's a
yeah,
great point. I know we'll come to it as we talk, but that it kind of makes you think some of the fundamental changes, even in the structure of Hollywood, that comes from this film. It
yeah.
just and Jaws, of course, set the table for the summer blockbuster. But man, this film absolutely helps follow suit in that tradition. And
Yeah.
of course, they're thinking of Jaws with it's in looking at the discussion of the film, that I know they're looking at, they certainly they've got to make money. That one thing, another thing we talked about too before the show was uh, George Lucas gets together with Steven Spielberg in Hawaii because Lucas runs away to Hawaii because he's worried about how Star Wars is going to open. He's worried
Well,
how
he doesn't like to go to premieres. He doesn't want to be
right.
photographed for that. He doesn't want to have to dress up, I guess. And so he went to Hawaii, and Spielberg was there too. They were building a sandcastle together, oddly enough. And Spielberg was talking about what he wanted his next project to be. He wanted to be a James Bond film. And Lucas says, "I got a better idea. I've got this about a adventurous archaeologist," and that's where that started. Where Spielberg was picked to direct that, and it's highly derivative, of course, of movie serials, just like Star Wars was. Star Wars is basically Flash Gordon, and this one would be an amalgam of other things. I don't know all of the serials that were available then. I'd seen the old Zorro things and the Batman things and the Commando Cody things that were more science fictiony, more fantasy. But they all had the same stock footage of the car going off the cliff, and always things at the end of the two-reeler that would make you wonder how they are able to get out of it. And then when the next week came along, the next episode came along, they would show a scene that wasn't in between the time when the car went off the road and burned up, and the guy actually had gotten out to get a sandwich or something, and then the car went off by itself. But things like that, they were not very believable, but they took this and added the production values of 1980s.
One writer, speaking of those serials, one writer broke it down there's so many books on Spielberg that broke it down and I saw what he was going to do, and I ended up looking at another writer's book, but he broke it down. He said, really, this is six serials put together. These are six episodes that make up Indiana Jones. And what you said reminded me of a scene. It would have been perfect, we think, when at the end, when they're in Egypt, and we think Marion dies in the truck that blows up, and that would have been the end of that cliffhanger.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, whoa, there she is, and and we don't really get a scene like a flashback showing how the basket that she was in gets switched, but
Yeah.
nonetheless it really refers to what you're talking about. It's like, oh, okay, you're fine, and that didn't happen, but we closed that episode with the truck blowing up. uh, but yeah, really serial structure to the thing.
It really was, and
Serialized, yeah.
it's yes, it certainly was, and because of the way they did it, it was, you overlooked a lot of the faults, which there were some in there, but it didn't matter because, and some of them I think they put it on purpose because the pacing of this was such that you didn't have time to take a breath between one cliffhanger and the next. And that,
Right.
and another thing in the old movies where, if you watch them critically, you'd find that it was all stock footage that was happening here. You'd know that somebody was going to cheat in order to make this work in the next serial, and they did that here too.
What you said too with stock footage reminds me of the way there's a famous conference when Lawrence Kasdan, they call him Larry. He's not, he's not a close personal friend, so I'm going to call him Lawrence Kasdan. But Lawrence Kasdan, Spielberg, and Lucas all get together, talk for like 5 days, 9 hours. They got
Yeah.
these ideas. They're coming, and at one of the kind of a famous story writing conference of all these conferences, and they're hammering things out. They had really bad ideas when you look at the final film, you're glad they jettisoned that idea. But
Yes.
one thing they kept constantly mentioning is saving money, because they knew they couldn't spend a fortune on this. But the way they would save money is stock footage, or kind of create their own stock footage, but in a very cheap way. They were constantly talking, well, we really don't have to go to Egypt that much, or they
Yeah.
really wanted to go to the Orient. They had a
Yeah.
complete episode that was going to be involved in the
And
Orient.
Shanghai, I think. Yeah.
Right, right,
Which they
and
put
so
in the
their
second
way of
film.
exactly, it becomes the second film. Their way of saving money, they're talking, we can get stock footage of that airplane, the kind of clipper type plane that Indy flies, that lands on the water. Is there one of those left? Well, we can get stock footage. And then the way they would refer to people shooting, like in Shanghai, would
Yeah.
be like almost like, they get the B-roll footage, but it was almost like stock footage that they would be, and then wherever studio they would use, they would just then integrate the B-roll, which is a common Hollywood technique. But it comes from the serials too. It's that's use of
Yes.
stock and B movies, which we love from the 50s too.
Did a
But
lot of
always,
that in early television as well, in order to make the Warner Brothers did this in a lot of the early ABC series, especially because the television at that time couldn't afford to do full cinema quality. And
right.
so in order to save money, what they did was they took just stock footage from old features, and then would use the actors in the TV show for the close-ups, and then everything else is stock footage.
Stock footage, right.
They did that in the original version of Hawaii Five-0. There wasn't more than about 5 minutes of original shooting on any episode, and they did that because they were filming in Hawaii and everything was so expensive there that that was their way of getting out of it cheaply. But yeah, they certainly did it here.
Even Mannix and Mannix car chases as late as the 70s would use.
At this point, yes, true. At this point, Spielberg had a bad reputation for going over time and over budget. And so he was determined, working with Lucas. Lucas was notoriously cheap, and
Right.
and Star Wars was shot for a shoestring on what it ought to have been, and so he was wanting to work with Lucas because of his way of knowing how to do things more efficiently, and he wanted to kind of shake off his reputation of being a big spender. So this movie actually came in under budget and under time, and part of what they did was they built models of all the sets. Now, they used the one for Tanis in order to do the staff of Ra and all that, but they actually built model sets so that he could plan his shots,
Right.
and so that saved incredible amounts of time. Plus, he would do only like 4 takes of a shot rather than 40.
Right.
And
right,
so it saved a lot of time, and it was good because they filmed in Tunisia where Star Wars had been filmed partially,
right.
and they all got sick.
Oh God, yes.
They had dysentery and food poisoning and all this kind of stuff that was going on around there, except for Spielberg. And the reason
Right.
Spielberg didn't get sick was he brought SpaghettiOs with him. He didn't eat
Yeah.
any of the local food. He just opened a can of SpaghettiOs. So he stayed from getting sick on this, and that caused some changes in how quickly they wanted to get out of there,
Right.
and also in some of the people they used. One of their unit directors was put in the flying wing because the stunt guy was too sick to be in it,
That's right.
and so he was there, and then they used the guy that the big guy that was fighting Indy that while the plane was rotating.
Right.
3 times he died 3 times in this film as different characters.
Yeah, they do a good job of covering that up because
Yeah,
it's such a notable character that
yeah,
that you really can't say, "Oh, I've seen him die before." I mean, they make it subtle because that death, his final death, when he was just so memorable,
it
and
was.
and it's just the pacing, the editing on that is just perfect. To get the reaction shots, Indy's reaction shot. Oh, this is and it just works. If you mess that up by a couple of frames here or there, you're going to make it seem too long or too short. It's just perfect the way Indy sees what's going to happen, and almost feels sympathy, and
Yeah,
whoops, it's just too late. But just fantastic. That was you were talking about how sick they got. There's a deleted scene with John Rhys Davies, and I know you've read about that deleted
yes.
scene. He was sick while they were filming, and he said he didn't care. It came out the wrong end, and he said, and
Yeah,
it was an interesting deleted scene too, because you're talking about the pace of the film, and
right.
this is one case I love deleted scenes, and about a third of the time I'm going, they should have left that in. Really, these deleted scenes, there's not. I can't think of one that I would have left in at the end of the day. There's some interesting things that you
Yeah.
learn, and the John Rhys Davies, he's going to be as Salah is going to be killed. Apparently, he's captured,
Hmm.
and they're a German tourist, a young kid, is been told to kill him, but he can't do it, and it's
Oh
an
yeah.
interesting humanizing that that would have been an interesting thing because of all the
They
people
said the
involved.
kid wasn't a professional actor. He was just found there, and they used him, and the performance was brilliant. And then they just couldn't keep it in. It
They
slowed
just
down the
couldn't keep
film
it.
too much.
It would have humanized one German in the
Yeah.
film. Other than that, that's the Germans aren't truly humanized in this
No.
film. And it's 1936 Nazi Germany. It's not a place for a lot of humanization to be happening anyway. But that's an interesting choice, an interesting scene that was in there.
Of course, the most famous one, everybody's probably heard this one, where he Indy shoots the samurai sword
Right.
guy. Wasn't a samurai sword, but I mean he was juggling the sword ready to go in, and the scripted scene was for him to use his whip to wrap around the sword and pull it away. And they did like 50 takes of this, and everybody was sick, and everybody was ready to get rid of it. And Harrison Ford suggested, "Why don't I just shoot them?" And they thought it was a good idea, and that's how that worked. It
Yeah,
wasn't it wasn't an ad lib, but it was a suggestion by Harrison Ford.
and
And
there's
and if they kept shooting, it would have taken more time. And once again, they didn't want to have to take too many takes. They didn't want to have to spend any more time in Tunisia than they had to.
oh gosh, and there's places to look at this, kind of there, and this is one when you're watching it, you just think, oh my goodness, that was incredible. 1981. I know, it's memorable that,
Yes.
instead of following the traditional trope, it's like, oh, you got a sword. Whoops, my gun is jammed, so I'll have to have a sword, and we're both fighting with swords, and it's equal. How many times do we see that? This is the first time. It's just, nope, I've got a gun, you don't,
Yeah.
and I've got dysentery.
Why hasn't anybody ever thought of this before?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Well, and you would not believe that. And I love academic criticism, but sometimes, in my opinion, they can go a little overboard. And I like writing that kind of stuff, but still, and this was a really interesting book, Darkness in the Bliss Out,
Yeah.
and it's about Spielberg. And there were critics. We've kind of, for some famous critics, Robin Wood, great writer on Hitchcock, but they took Spielberg to task for allowing the gun. They said, this is breaking all the rules. It's breaking etiquette. It's breaking standard. And it felt like, of course, they're going to attach and it's possible to do this sometimes. And sometimes you've got some good points, but they were attaching. They said, oh, this is just like Reagan era diplomacy, cowboy diplomacy, and we're here we are in this formerly colonized country, and we're going to shoot the
Yeah.
Indy's just going to shoot the guy, and it reflects what America's doing in terms of diplomacy at the time, and it reflects colonialism, and then this author says maybe some of that's there, but he said if you look a little deeper, it also, Indy's character, it's himself, has got a darker side.
Yeah.
And if you see that darker side, you can also say, how does that reflect upon us? And you can also just say, it's just the most practical thing to do. The guy makes a point, because we forget Marion he can't stick around if Indy's going to save this young woman that he is in love with. He can't stick around and follow the rules of etiquette. She's in a basket being carried somewhere. He's
Yeah.
desperately trying to follow her. She's calling out, Indy, Indy. And it's just darn practical to take the gun out and shoot the guy. In a
Yeah.
sense, it's a practical, common sense thing to do.
And if you look at the film itself, there are like 60 people who die in this film.
Right.
Indy kills 11 of them. And actually, Marion kills more than he does. I think she kills 14. But but most of the people in the film die of their own actions.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You know what? I think she does the most damage when she's in that plane. She was incredible in that plane. That's when she gets a machine gun, and
Yes.
and we were talking about this a little before the show too. Is like in that story conference, they had her cast as as kind of a seductress,
Yeah.
Nazis that could have worked for the Nazis. We don't know who she works for, but she's a double agent, and much more of a turncoat or a much traitorous person than Indy. And I am so glad they got rid of all of that,
Yeah.
because to have Marion be Marion and involve her, that once in that story conference, once they got rid of the idea of her being a seductress, then it's interesting to look at those. I was listening to those notes. There's a show called
Yeah.
the projection room,
Mhm.
and they actually read that transcript. And as soon as they got rid of the spy seductress, all of a sudden they're thinking, hey, she could be the daughter of a former colleague of Indy's. And then they came up with the relationship, which is another side of darkness.
Well,
For Indy.
they say that you can either have you either have a nemesis or a mentor, and so they went the mentor route and then made her kind of the stand-in for the mentor who dies mysteriously for some other reason. They say an avalanche. I don't know if they mentioned it in the film or not.
And another side of darkness, because the film just totally implies that with 10 years prior, when she loved Indy, she was underage, and she said, I loved you, you know what you're doing. And Indy doesn't apologize. Basically says, well, you knew what you were doing too. But it creates this
But she said, "But I was a child,"
but I was
and she
exactly.
was. I'm kind of that would have made it into the film these days. I'm afraid that's
In the context of these days, you're correct,
yes.
sir. You're correct, sir. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And I guess we could mention this. Another deleted scene is where he's visited, and he's wearing a bathrobe when he comes out to to meet
Denham Elliott,
Denham
Brody.
Elliott, Brody.
Yeah, Marcus Brody. Yeah.
Yeah, and the part of the scene that was cut was who was in this bedroom that he came out
Yeah.
of,
It's
and
probably a student.
one of
Yeah.
the students, yeah, and there was another in the hall. You were saying as he's being brought to seeing the government guys that a student makes some reference to they have an appointment for something that's other than archaeology, but
Archaeology at noon. Yeah.
yeah. So they kind of took these things away from Indy, except for the thing with Marion, and maybe that's a good idea because that would have made him a little more of a pervert, especially in today's way of looking at it.
Yeah. It and that, but it does give him this darkness, and that, like we were talking about before with the character of that's interesting. Okay, Charlton Heston comes up. We were in the running in our not Running Man, in the Omega Man,
Yeah,
talking about how in some respects we have this character who we think the all American character, and yet we're learning through his frailties about ourselves. How can we be better? We're learning that in some respects
yeah,
some distinct problems, and through those problems it makes us question who we are. Indy's got so much darkness to him that some of these critics, and I'll give this credit, the author, James Kendrick, these, for really seeing into that darkness. And
yeah,
if that's our hero, then it's not really just a rubber stamp of everything Indy does represents the Reagan years, and that this is somehow a bestowing of approval, that he's creating this mark of
right.
approval. Instead, we're questioning who is this character. This is, and yet we all love Indy, but it also, that darkness, looking into the darkness, it makes him in some respects more
Well,
relatable. It's an
well,
interesting.
it's informed by the characterization is based on Humphrey Bogart in Treasure of the Sierra Madre, where he's an
Oh,
alcoholic, and they kind of touch on that here in the movie as well. But that's where Harrison Ford asked why they're in the middle of the jungle. He's wearing a leather jacket, and that was basically because Bogart did. And
right.
that's Treasure of the Sierra Madre was 1948 film, which it was highly based on. And they also say that there's some people that say that it kind of stole from Secret of the Incas, which was another Charlton Heston film
Charlton Heston. Yeah.
in 1954, where Heston is a treasure hunter and an adventurer, and he studies an ancient map room, and a beam of light tells him where to go and things like this. So
Oh, that
it's
was,
some of it is very
yes.
derivative.
That was, yeah. But there are absolutely outstanding films. Like, the nothing is truly original anymore. It's just, how do you take that material and make it unique, make it new, make as you're mixing it. And yes, I've seen that picture of Charlton Heston, and does look very
Yeah.
similar to it. But
Oh, and the other thing is that Lucas wanted him to be Indiana Smith.
oh God,
And,
that's
and name Indiana was the name of his wife's Malamute, and
right.
so they bring that into the third movie that he's named after the dog, and he actually was named after Marsha Lucas's dog, but he wanted Smith, and Spielberg said he needed something different than Smith, and so Jones was decided on.
It's amazing how fast Jones can come up as a. There was when I was in high school, I would make tributes to Star Trek movies on Super 8, and I asked uh, a good friend. They were all my best friends, of course. I was I was the captain of the starship, and so I asked him. But I would throw in these little lines sometimes that they weren't expecting, and I said, "What's your name again?" He's coming in as a new person on the bridge, and he said, Jones, sir. So it's funny, Smith and Jones.
Yeah,
They went with Jones
that's
instead
true.
of, but Smith. Why is it that Smith sounds so much worse? Jones works and Smith just does not.
I don't know. It's two names though. If you, I had a friend named Jones, and he said he couldn't check into a motel without people suspecting he was going under an alias. That even after showing his driver's license, they wouldn't believe.
Exactly. But it absolutely works as the name. There's another deleted, and it's interesting. I know we're looking at details, but how much these details connect to the overall picture. Um, there's a deleted scene where Marion, she comes up, first thing she does is slug Indy. And I thought that's just perfect. I really
Yeah.
think she's got so much spunk in the film. I could, Mr. Grant would like her. You got spunk, kid. And
Yeah.
so
I hate Spunk. Yeah.
yeah, forgot about. Yes, I hate spunk. And she slugs him, but in that scene, apparently they had kind of wrapped that scene where she kisses Indiana, and that's just too soon. That's She still should have that vim and vigor. By the end of that scene,
Yeah.
though, I loved in the story conference how in depth they got into her character, and once they changed, it's amazing. To me, once they changed her character from being a seductress, the rest of the film falls into place. It just has
Yeah.
an air on instead of, if she says it's seductress, then we're looking at Indy's darkness. And again, when you see darkness in a character, you realize in some respects, not all respects, but you realize that that character becomes more three-dimensional for sure.
Yeah.
But when she and so just
But they already had that. They already had that because he's an academic who's
right.
stuttering through a lecture, and then he's he's then running away from a boulder that's rolling down at him with a gold idol in his hand. So I mean, this is the I think they had enough complexity. They didn't really need to go with this dark, amoral characters they did. And I think also that they probably based Marion a lot on Princess Leia as someone who has been in the trenches.
That's a great point. She's been and boy, has she ever been in the trenches. The scene beforehand where she's out drinking the
Yeah.
guys in Nepal are fantastic. But yeah, if they'd have put that kiss there, it just was too soon. And then when she actually does kiss him, it comes in the right spot. It's in it, adventurous part of the film, and it just works. And they build on that relationship. But if anybody's going to betray somebody, it's him. When he could leave, he could rescue her, and then he just leaves her tied up in the when they're in Egypt. That's it's funny they kind of switch that betrayal around, and but it makes sense if he unties her at that point and she's loose, then he'll lose any chance of finding that map room and
Yeah.
and referencing Charlton Heston.
Well, they had a couple of problems on how they were going to get Marion from one place to another. She's in the dress when she's dropped in the snake pit, and she was not dressed like that. So they had to kind of put in the scene where she's seduced by Belloc, or in
Right.
his terrible way to do it. And she tries to do the drinking game again, and they bring out, that way. Why is she willing to put on the dress? She's willing to draw him in and then do the drinking game and win out. Except that the twist on that, of course, is that he was his own family's distillery, and he'd been drinking that since he was 4 years old or something. And so she kind of gives up on that, and that's where he gets her and then drops her in the pit.
Right, and that apparently Karen Allen went with Paul Freeman. They went back and figured out, because the rationale of why you got to get her in that dress was apparently they had it scripted, but they really needed more for the actors. So
Yeah.
they go back and she figures out, I'm going to use this to cover up the knife, and then I'll get in the dress and and that was perfect. You could look at that scene as it does when you step back from the movie. It feels like a
Mhm.
kind of a strange little one-off scene, as you're kind of thinking, okay, this is interesting, but it actually works in the
It,
context.
it works to get you from one place to the next.
It really does. And
Sometimes you
the
just need
actors
those.
they did a great job with that. One actor that I didn't realize you're always looking for, and for actors that will appear in later films, was, oh gosh, I misplaced it myself. He's early in the film. He's a terrific actor, and we see him early on. And he's the last of the helpers when they're with the Incas. That actor, the very last one, the one that
Oh yeah.
and a terrific actor. He's appeared with he was in Spider-Man 2. and also
Interesting.
in the multiverse Spider-Man. And we will come up with his name
Okay.
because our many viewers yelling at us right now, telling us the name, it's just not coming through. But we'll come because he's a terrific actor. That is bugging the heck out of me. One thing about acting too is you look at the different types of the most famous alternate casting would have been Tom Selleck as
Yeah.
as Indy,
They
and
also suggested Bruce Boxleitner, and he went on to make a TV series called Tales of the Gold Monkey, where he plays the same kind of adventurer. He plays Frank Buck, who was a historical figure, but basically they were doing an Indiana Jones TV series.
and Indiana. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. So yeah, yeah, a fascinating list of. I had forgotten about. You mentioned that that they were modeling things off of Barbara Stanwyck. It's
Yeah,
kind of the way she would be. Sean Young. I did see they showed Sean Young
yeah,
from Blade Runner. Acted, in fact, is in the tests in the test screenings. She had they brought in Sean Young and Tom Selleck, and Sean Young would have been an interesting choice. But I think, and you got a point about Karen Allen's acting, but I do think that all in all, not a bad job. She kind of
yeah. It worked. It worked.
right,
I think there could have been a little more characterization into her adventurous, because it kind of waxed and waned, I thought, but nevertheless, what's interesting about this, when you're talking about different forms, Blade Runner came about because Ridley Scott had seen some of the dailies from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that's when he knew he needed him to be Deckard in Blade Runner.
I did that. No, I that
A
and
lot
it's
of a lot of things came out of this. I mean, Spielberg and goodness, it was Harrison Ford's wife at the time co-wrote E.T.
right.
during the time when this film was being filmed, and so that came of that,
A lot of
and
connections.
yeah,
Oh, but I can completely see Ridley Scott seeing, and it's what we've been talking about, that
yeah,
extra layer of darkness that Harrison Ford brings, that
yes.
kind of undermines some of these criticisms of critiques of the film. But that's exactly what he wanted in Blade Runner.
Right.
And
He had thought Dustin Hoffman, and then once he saw the dailies on this, wanted Harrison Ford after that.
wow, so that
Now, they
yeah,
wanted Harrison Ford for this film from the beginning. Spielberg wanted him for that. Lucas was trying to talk him out of it because he was afraid it would be like
ah,
Robert De Niro and all of
Godfather films, yeah,
well, no, the director.
Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola, working with
Yeah,
oh,
uh, he had him in just about
every film. Yeah,
every film, and he didn't want it to be he didn't want Harrison Ford to be Lucas's Bobby De Niro. And
Yeah.
so he was kind of against that, but Spielberg won out on that.
He did, and it was just the best choice, especially when Tom Selleck was doing Magnum PI and was not available.
He wasn't available, but it turns out that they delayed the start of Magnum PI, the production of it, so he would have been available. He just
Oh,
didn't know it at the time. That was one of those
he,
kind of things where they pull the rug out from under you. They say, "No, no, we need you right now," and then they don't really, and it just
oh,
keeps you out of opportunities. And we've seen that a number of actors have been done that too. Mostly, we've heard about it in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Will Wheaton, Denise Crosby, and Troy. No, I can't remember her name.
Deanna, yeah,
No, no,
Deanna Troy, but yeah.
Deanna Troy. But I mean, what was the actress? Um,
Oh, they're yelling at us again.
they are, they are. I met her. She's very sweet.
Yes.
But anyway, but all those people were basically said, no, no, we need you very desperately. You can't make that movie. We can't do without you in this episode. And then, of course, they don't use them for 3 weeks. So that happens a lot.
Yeah, the timing, they think it's going to be one. Yeah. And well, yeah. And we talked about that with Pierce Brosnan. And there's a long story with yeah, and how he was not available for Bond for years because he was in TV. And that might have been able to change. But yeah, with the timing, and it all. I mean, you look at the timing. Spielberg gets, because of Lucas's influence, he's able. You look at the timing of the shooting of the movie. They
Yeah.
did the rare thing. They had 6 weeks budgeted for filming in the desert,
Yeah.
Tunisia, but I think they got out of there in 4 weeks.
They did
Um,
for a
yeah.
couple of reasons. One was their very efficient shooting, and the other was that they were afraid they were all going to die there before they could get done, and so
Oh,
they took it a little ahead of
that bring
schedule. But
and that brings up another common criticism of film, and you can hear it when you're listening to the story conference from the show, The Projection Booth.
yeah,
The the you it Some of this film is a product. We all are. Some of this film is a product of its time,
yeah,
but and they're talking about different ethnicities. We'll get Egyptians, and you can tell it's mental tropes going on in their head instead of really singling out people as Egyptians. And I think they did think about Omar Sharif as, in some respects, in the film, but and I don't know, I don't think it was the same part. Might have been the part of Salah, but I thought they did, all in all. This is just me, and it's easy for me to think this from my perspective, and I could be wrong, but I thought you could do worse. I'll put it this way. For one thing, I'm a huge John Rhys Davies fan. I love the guy. Everything ever
yeah.
since I saw Sliders, and then you go, oh hey, great, he's in Lord of the Rings, and he's terrific. But I thought that to have him as an Egyptian helping, I thought he's a very capable person, and it differentiates this movie from the old serials, where you wouldn't have taken a representative Egyptian and given him that part, who's every bit as smart as Indy, maybe a little bit smarter than Indy. He's smart enough to say, "You go first." I mean,
Yeah.
into the snakes, and but just perfect. But to me, and yes, he is an English actor, but on the other hand, it just I thought they're trying to do a good job of portraying an Egyptian. And
Now
recall that.
this is something that was a problem for John Rhys Davis. He was as Hala. Uh,
Right.
he read the description of his character, and he was supposed to be a skinny Egyptian digger, and he said, "I can't play that." And they said, "No, what we want you to do is to think of a combination of Falstaff and the character that you played in the TV series Shogun, of the Spanish
Right.
mariner." And so that's how he played that. And I can't imagine Danny DeVito, for instance, which they also considered for his part to be
Nope, nope, nope,
to have worked.
nope. So many things. Yeah, if you got Tom Selleck and Danny DeVito, it's just a totally different thing. It feels like a TV movie at that point.
Well,
And
yeah, that's true.
it just but you're right. And the Falstaff characterizations for him are just perfect. And I am late coming to Falstaff. Really wanted to. I love Orson Welles, and one of his greatest films is the Chimes of Midnight, and the Chimes of Midnight, which is following the Falstaff character. And so I finally caught up with it. I had to read the plays, and then of course, and you have to get away from the up and down reading of the plays in high school, which just kills Shakespeare.
Yeah,
But you got to read the plays and finally let that voice get into your head. And Orson Welles was so good at Falstaff, and so you can see that was just great advice for John Rhys Davies to say, this is who you're going to be, and I think he got his head around the character, and it's brilliant. It was just so much fun. Really, Denham. Looking at some of the characters, I could have used more of Denham Elliott. He's so good.
yeah.
And
Well, they do in subsequent films. I think they did
That's
him
true.
justice later on. It just, there was too much that needed to go into this film. There were too many good people on it, I think, was the biggest problem with it.
Yeah, and so much that you can easily see. There's no way you can go to the Orient. It's plenty. And
Yeah,
I love the way the plane flies. They even had the plane in this story conference. They had the idea that the plane should crash somewhere, and they spent a lot of time thinking, how does Indy survive one of those old propeller, like Pacific. I forget what they call them, the
The
clipper ship
Clippers, yeah.
planes. And so they had the idea that he would tie all the life rafts to himself, or tie all the either the life rafts or even the things that help you float.
Yeah.
Tie
Life
those
jackets, yeah.
life jacket and become a ball that bounces on the water. And then they decided to have the plane crash in the snow, like Nepal, I guess it would have been. It was going to, for some reason, they wanted it to crash. And then the plane's on fire, and Indy comes out of that middle of the fire on like an unexploded piece of metal, and he's like skiing, coming
Yeah.
as the plane splits apart. Yeah, yeah.
That's part of that James Bond thing that I'm glad they got rid
You
of.
are so right. That is just, although I gotta admit, Spielberg directing a James Bond film just is
I would
tantalizing.
like to see that, honestly.
Yeah.
Here's some of the other actors that they recommended for Indy. Sam Elliott,
Oh,
Jeff
okay. Yeah.
Jeff Bridges, Paul
Yeah.
Lamont, Christopher Guest. We already mentioned Bruce Boxleitner, Barry Bostwick,
Yes.
Harry Hamlin, of all people,
Yeah.
Mark Harmon, Nick
Yep.
Mancuso, Peter Coyote, John Calvin, Michael Bain, Sam Shepard, David Hasselhoff, uh, Tim Matheson, Jack Nicholson, Nick Nolte, John Shea, Nick Mancuso, Bill Murray, Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, Tom Selleck, as we mentioned. And so,
I want to see all three of those guys, Martin, Chevy Chase, and Bill Murray,
yeah.
cast in an indie film. I want to see.
I'm glad they came up with Harrison Ford.
Yeah. Oh, me too. That's a whole different film. That's yeah. And one character that an actor I kind of lost track of is again, I'm still working on the Spider-Man 2 reference, but Paul Freeman as Renee Belloc. That was terrific.
Yeah.
He worked out fine, and I love the back relationship with spunky Karen Allen, that somehow there's this relationship there, and then until Belloc totally well. Oh, that brings up, I got to admit, one more thing that from a former colleague of ours, Dr. Lane Roth, has also mentioned this book, because Doc, as we call him, would do work with Jungian archetypes, and the what was so fascinating is, and so his article that the author James Kilpatrick, making sure James Kendrick used, was called Shadows of the Raiders of the Lost Archetype, and Doc was always getting into archetypes, and so he, as dark as Indy is, it's the shadow archetype, and which you can kind of, I'm sure you can look at this as the hero's journey too. But what's fascinating is if you look at Indy as kind of like an anti-hero shadow, his shadow is Belloc, and that is such an interesting bit of conversation when Belloc says, "I am your shadow."
Well, there's more to it than that, even, because if you stop and think about it, and there's a fan theory on this, that Belloc never discovered anything on his own. He basically followed Indy around and then took it away from him. And so that's reflected in the opening scene where what was once yours is now mine again, he says. And there's even some idea that the communication that the government received was a way to get Indy involved in it so that he could find the stuff and Belloc could take it from him and look good with the Germans.
Wow. And exactly. He was constant, and that's what he would do. It's interesting you mentioned that, though. There's also a theory that says that the entire movie could have taken place without Indy. There's not one thing especially with
not until you get to the final scene.
Exactly.
At the final scene, after they've all died there, Indy is able to get the Ark and take it back. If he had not been there, it would have gone to the Germans. They would have figured out the same thing he did and had been able to use it. So that was where Indy actually made a difference. Everywhere else, you're right, it didn't change anything except got a few more people killed.
But it's so much more fun to watch that way. And a
Oh
flying
yeah.
wing, if that just goes normally without and doesn't go around in circles in the flying wing, that was an incredible scene.
It
You
is.
know,
It is kind of funny in that they say, "Oh, he must have loaded the Ark on there," which obviously, look at the thing; it didn't have any place to put any cargo, and I'm certain they put that in there just to play with you because they move it so fast. They're going to hope that you don't notice that it's impossible.
impossible to get. That would have been a nice line. Couldn't have used it anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
what the
There
heck
was
were you
another
thinking?
one. There was another one I heard about. Their boat plane that they had. It only had one engine running when they have it, which I understood was something common whenever you're taxiing
Oh, right.
in a boat plane. Actually, only one engine was working. They had acquired this plane and it wasn't completely restored, and they hadn't fixed the second engine on it, so only one of them would actually run. So they ran the one.
And Harrison Ford made it out of that plane okay, but not later. I think
Yeah,
later on, yeah. But the you bring up the ending too. That is another layer of darkness where you can also say if you're trying to and I understand how some of
yeah,
these critics were viewing this as and they'll kind of get to and I everybody can do this. This fits in perfectly as a piece of cultural artifact of how we might be acquiescing to the cultural political things that are happening, but the film also has a very dark ending that does not just exonerate America or say that
yeah,
or kind of say that some sort of like all of our foreign interventions are going to work and they're the things we should be doing in the 80s. Instead, these bureaucrats, they take the ark, which could be unbelievably dangerous. Although I got to admit, I'm not sure Denham Elliott and I mean Brody and Indy are the people to turn it.
no,
I'm
it's
not sure
true.
how safe they're going to be, but nonetheless, to put it in a warehouse and to lie about it and to say our top people and Indy knows it's a lie, even when Karen Allen, I always, even when Marion says to Indy at the very end of the film, well, that may be gone. We don't know where that is, but I'm here and I am here in the present moment and I care and love about you. And I mean, that really resonates. But Indy, it's not an easy, light ending. He doesn't look at her, he doesn't kiss her.
Yeah.
He's still got that darkness of what the government did in his mind
Well,
fade out end of the
it's
movie.
also part of the some of the old westerns. They'd get the girl but never kiss the girl. It was the joke
Ah,
was
good
they
point.
kiss they kiss the horse.
Yes. That's a
Now there are
layer of
other
darkness.
yeah, whole different story here.
We'll
We'll
just
get
leave
on
those files out. That's
we get onto that in a future podcast. Some of the people that were considered for Marion: Jane Seymour, Barbara Hershey, Mary Steenburgen, Amy Irving, Valerie Bertinelli, Linda Pearl, Stephanie
yeah.
Zimbalist, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Deborah Winger.
Wow. And I guess Sean Young was in there too, because but yeah, oh, Deborah Winger. There's some good
Yeah,
actors in there. There's a lot of I could see some of those. Yeah.
those are all obviously bound for much bigger things, but
Yeah.
that was what they had then.
Wow. Yeah. That's a great but they were some great obviously some people well with Spielberg and Lucas there were people wanted to be in that film and yeah that could have yeah that would have they were obviously wanting to be there. They really did have the pick of they obviously had unless you were dealing with contract problems, they had a lot of people that they could work with.
Yeah,
And yeah, but that they could I mean obviously they really wanted to be in the film. It's funny with that list that you just read, um the in that list I could see I actually can see a lot of those people in that list actually
yeah,
doing
yeah.
it. There's where except for I gotta admit the one they wanted the most of all is the one I have the most trouble with is Tom Selleck. I just
Yeah.
okay, Alfred Molina. Our viewers, that was and all he played really was. I mean, he's a character you remember, but he plays that porter in the very first part of the film when they're in Peru. Would that be right?
I think so.
Eh,
Yeah.
yeah, looking for the artifact from the Incas, which apparently was that's an interesting thing in itself. That little artifact was it's kind of like a fertility figure that had been, that you'd see in shops a lot, what they choose to be, the what Indy's after. And there was a lot of debate on whether its eyes moved, and you probably saw that apparent. And if it wasn't until the Blu-ray came out and we get to 1280, the resolution of Blu-ray, that you can see, because viewers would say, I saw those eyes move. And they had put a little remote control device where the eyes in that statue could actually move and track Indy.
Hmm.
Um, and there, and I watched an interesting featurette on that, and it even referenced one of my favorites. Sometimes when the eyes, like in a haunted house, and the eyes are looking at you from a painting, and they can look kind of fake. Like, I thought I saw the eyes move, and apparently that might have been the problem. But they left in one little shot of the eye, and you can see also in the making of, you can see Spielberg's actually holding the remote that can make the eyes move on that thing.
Yeah.
But but it's like so many of those artifacts, it was lost, and it took years to find that, Hollywood prop the
Yeah.
actual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of props, the submarine that they used was the model from Das Boot, which was filming at the same time.
Ah.
In fact,
And
they had forgotten to tell the technical crew at Das Boot that they were loaning the model out to Spielberg, and got a little panicked about it, that their expensive model had suddenly disappeared. But but they used that for
we'll,
the
we'll,
submarine in this picture.
we'll we'll trade you a shark work for the sub.
Right. And the submarine pin that they used in that was an actual one that was still in existence by the time the film was made, and had not been used otherwise, and so it was in good condition, and so that was an actual German sub base there.
That when they bring in the submarine, then to and
Yeah,
and and they have the Nazi flag hanging up over. That's so powerful. I mean, it's
yeah,
in an awful way, but it's you can tell. I mean, it feels like all is lost when the sub comes in, and how are they going to get out of this? Except
yeah,
except the beauty therein, inside the ark itself, is, it's just the ark itself, and the power that's in there
yeah.
that is not going to allow for. Yeah, you just
That's
can't use
true.
that power in this way. And
That was a problem, by the way, in the sub base where Indy, dresses up in the German uniform, and I thought it was
right.
funny. It's the first time that anybody has ever stolen somebody's clothes and they didn't fit. I
And it
mean,
wasn't the perfect fit.
in Austin Powers, they made fun of that, where they go and change clothes with people who are quite obviously bigger and smaller than they were, and their clothes fit perfectly. But the German that was spoken there was done by English actors, and they spoke very bad German. And so the original film went out that way. And when they dubbed for the German audience, they of course did the whole film in German, but they came back later before the DVD came out and had people who would actually speak German re-record those lines, because it was a little embarrassing.
He was a little embarrassed. That's a good high, especially as I mean, yeah, the level of authenticity. Even though you look at so many things in an arc that's going to do what it's going to do, it's still
Yeah.
you preserve that level of authenticity and those details in it. It just works. Um, one thing that we
Oh, by
need
the
to
way,
remember.
another thing that's kind of interesting out of this, of all of the big names that were in this, Paul Freeman, who was Belloc,
Right.
is the one that nobody's heard of anymore.
Good point. And that was me. I had lost track of Paul Freeman too.
Yeah.
As a yeah. But you can tell, a great actor.
And he
Did
was
a
like third billed in this. So, I mean, he was right behind Harrison
exactly.
Ford and Karen Allen. And so it's amazing that he didn't do better with this. I mean, he played certainly a good villain.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, just right. I mean, French, but dealing with the Nazis, and yet just a step away from being that bad, because well, I mean, he's in love with Marion, but he definitely doesn't want, and he
Yeah.
even kind of even stands up for her at the risk of his own life to a point, because they start to question his loyalty. The Nazis do, but
Yeah.
uh, and that effect at the you speaking of the R rating that it didn't get because they didn't have it, but that effect of the faces at the end is incredible.
Yeah.
Uh, best I
And
can
we talked about
understand.
that before, the idea of undercranking the camera and using um, um, a hair dryer, not a hair dryer, but one of these hot air blowers to melt the wax
And
on the dummy
layers of
heads.
wax.
Yes.
Because it's one thing just to have melting wax, but to have the different layers. You got your skin level, then there's
Yes.
the muscle, and then eyes and the bone. Whoa! I mean, that's an
Yeah.
incredible effect. Just and one other deleted scene. This one might have been a little intriguing, but it slows down the pacing. Because in the movie, all of a sudden, whoa! Paul Freeman, is in this. They mentioned it's going to be a Jewish ritual that connects to the ark, but all of a sudden he's completely dressed up, and they do show him in a deleted scene dressing up, but that does
Yeah.
kind of hit you like pow. But it would
Well, it
have.
wasn't until they filmed that Spielberg realized that they hadn't mentioned Jews anywhere in the film, despite the fact that, that's what Nazis are known for, is hating Jews. So they put in that
Exactly.
line where they're questioning, do we really want to do a Jewish service in order to open this ark?
Right, right, and that's funny. It's you can see in Belloq's character. I don't think he even cared. I may just be throwing this out there, but I don't think he even cared about maybe even getting it to Hitler. He is his shadow side of Indy. He is an archaeologist, an adventurer
Yeah.
archaeologist, but an archaeologist wants to know things, hidden knowledge, wants to learn things. And I don't think, they were saying, well, let's see what happens. What is this going to do before we take it to the Fuhrer? But I don't think he didn't even care about getting it to the Fuhrer. He just wanted to open the thing and see what was going to happen. But it actually probably would have been a terrific idea to go ahead and take it to the Fuhrer. We could have avoided World War II. That's if the Fuhrer would have opened the box in 1936,
Yes.
and the other way is if Hitler's damn art teacher would have just said you're actually pretty good, that might have that might have saved World War II also. So, what about sound effects, music? What's your kind of take on that?
This is probably the best soundtrack that John Williams has ever written. I mean, Star Wars is memorable, but I think this one really was perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got my friend Eddie, one of my best friends ever you meet in your whole life. That Lieutenant Jones, that we did this. He would always focus on music and sound effects. He got every John Williams, and Jerry Goldsmith. He loved Jaws, which may be maybe this when you mentioned the best soundtrack. Jaws is up there too, but you get but it's but yeah, he would always pay attention to the sound effects in films because
Yes.
that just brings a different layer. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking of I can't
Well, they
other
say
than
that Indy's pistol, they used the 30-06 rifle shot to do the sound effect for the pistol. That's why it sounded
whoa,
so explosive.
that's why it sounds because it's unbelievably explosive.
Yes.
That worked beautifully. Oh my goodness, because you're thinking, my God, Indy's pistols. That is one thing about the music too. It is outstanding. But another comment that you wouldn't get on some of these Rambo films, another comment on our hero is John Williams actually plays with him. I mean, he grabs he grabs a rope. He's going to swing over to the plane, and the rope doesn't even get him a third of the way
Yeah.
there.
That was
Plop,
funny.
and the music is like satire at that point. It just
Yeah.
yeah.
And of course, the scene once he gets in the plane has a snake in it. That's my pet snake, Reggie. But show some backbone.
Yeah. I hate
Oh,
snakes.
here's a little notch of interest. Michael Bay was an intern. He was 15 years old and worked on this film. Basically, his job was to store the storyboards when they weren't being used. And when he said, as an adult later, that when he saw the storyboards, he thought the film was going to suck.
I was going to say, what lessons did Michael Bay take from this film? Could he have learned a little better? I mean, I love The Rock. There's some Michael Bay films that are The Island's not. It's
He
it
worked
could
with
be
Spielberg on
watchable.
the Transformers films.
Say it again.
He worked with Spielberg on the Transformers
On the
films.
transfer, and I forget I forget Spielberg is on the Transformers films. That's yeah, but that's funny. Michael Bay would say how and those storyboards were just so well laid out, just
Yeah,
unbelievable. But to your point, the one place where Spielberg got rid of the storyboards, and it's where Marion is so heroic. She takes it makes so much sense too. She takes the blocks that are keeping the plane from moving and brings them up and just clobbers the pilot. And but Spielberg didn't. He might have had storyboards, but I think that was a sequence. But he just got rid of the storyboards, and all of a sudden let Harrison Ford fight the guy. And of all the sequences where I'm thinking you might need storyboards, that was not story. That apparently
interesting.
he went away from his storyboards for that sequence. I mean, and which is amazing too, because the guy's got to be in the bad Nazi guy's got to be in the perfect place when he hits the propeller, and it was excellent. I mean, it
Yeah.
just works. Uh,
Well, let's
what
hope he didn't actually hit the propeller.
it looks yeah.
How much extra do I get paid for being chopped up by a propeller?
Woo. And that was, so many of the places they actually let you see the gore. That was one place where they just cut to the tail of the plane and you could see the blood. It's yeah,
Yeah.
splash up and let the viewers do the work on that one.
The one thing where they pulled back was on the monkey. The monkey died of bad dates, and they had an animatronic monkey to do a death scene. They decided it wasn't a good idea and left that out. They just showed that the dead monkey and Sala saying bad dates.
Oh yeah, exactly.
But and also the way they got the monkey to do the Heil Hitler salute, they had grapes hanging out of camera range, and he was reaching for the grapes, and it took several takes until it looked like a real salute.
Gotcha.
And of course, the sound effects of the monkey were done by a sound effects guy.
Wow, that's we're done by the which sound effects guy? The
I don't remember his name, but I think it's Ben Burt.
Gotcha. Was that sound? Yeah. Oh, there were some legend. Oh, I think one of their art directors passed away. One of the ones that he had worked on Star Wars, but he passed away between Star Wars and this film. But the other one, he apparently had a partner, and the art direction's incredible on the film. It's to take such a simple idea from serials and to elevate it with all these details to just a work of art that even resonates and makes us think about who we are. It's an amazing film. Is it your favorite of all the indie films?
I would say so. I would say close second is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade with Sean Connery. It had a little more comedy in it, and of course, Sean Connery.
Yeah. What a pairing! I mean, oh my god, yeah. Yeah. That would be another good film at some point.
Yeah. There was the thing where in the very beginning, Indy, as the professor is saying, archaeology is not about swashbuckling, and there's never an X that marks the spot. And so, of course, later in the film, there's an X that marks the spot.
It's awesome.
Well, I think that we should move along here, but as always, lots of fun talking with you, and we hope that we will have something to talk about next week. We're playing with the idea of Galaxy Quest, are we not?
We are. Oh, what a film! That just
Yes.
As you mentioned, one of the best Trek films ever.
that was never a Trek film.
That was never a Trek film. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll be back next week with Galaxy Quest. So we hope that you'll join us then. Until then, if you have not subscribed, please do so, and a like would not be bad either. Thank you very much, and until next time, don't go far.